For more on these developments, I want to bring on Tim Murtaugh, the Director of Communications for the 2020 Trump campaign. Tim, we just played that ad that Senator Tom Cotton put out. It's taking aim at Joe Biden and, once again, his ties to China, but also reiterating the claim that he's too weak to lead during these times. Is that something that you think we'll see a lot of between now and November?
No, I think so. Joe Biden is too weak to lead. Just take a look at what's going on in the Democrat Party today. The entire party is being overrun with this defund the police movement. And Joe Biden is so weak, he's not able to stand up to the extremists in his own party who are really carrying this away and getting out of control with it. You see the mayors of Los Angeles and New York, the two largest cities in our country, the mayor of San Francisco, of course, the city council in Minneapolis, and all kinds of elected officials and members of Congress. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, for one, loudly supports the defund the police movement, and she actually holds a position of leadership within Joe Biden's campaign. And this very night, tonight, Joe Biden is having a fundraiser headlined by John Legend, and John Legend says that he's going to work on Biden and try to get him to support the defund the police movement. Joe Biden is a weak leader. His decision-making process has always been questioned. You know, the Obama defense secretary said that he's been wrong on every foreign policy call in the last 40 years. He cannot stand up to the leftmost flank, the extremists in his party. And, you know, they just walk up to him every once in a while and tap him on the shoulder and say, hey, Joe, we need you to change positions on this. And he does. And so that's what we fear with the defund the police movement is that, we know they're eventually going to get to him and he'll be on their side.
Yeah, and I think it's even worth noting that even Senator Bernie Sanders, a way more progressive candidate than Joe Biden was, is against defunding the police. He didn't even come out that strong for it initially. But once again, Senator Bernie Sanders is also a member of the surrogate team for Joe Biden as well. So I think you're onto something when you say that there are a lot of different voices that are being in the Biden campaign right now because they don't necessarily trust the candidate at the top of the ticket. I mean, you're exactly right to say that on a lot of these issues, if you're a progressive or even just a Democrat these days, Joe Biden has been on the wrong side of a lot of these votes for a long time. And so when we're looking at what to use against Joe Biden, what the Republican Party will use, is it once again going to come back to the economy and those numbers?
Well, the economy is going to be a central argument that we make. We think that what happened with the coronavirus, we know exactly what happened, and it's indisputable. President Trump had built the greatest economy that any American living had ever seen. There's no question of that, and it was artificially interrupted by the coronavirus. There's also no dispute there. And so we've already seen the great American comeback already begin. 2.5 million jobs created just in the month of May. It's the best month of job creation in the history of this country. So the Trump policies are still in place, and they're already launching the great American comeback. On the other hand, Joe Biden, his policies are terrible and his record is terrible. He helped oversee the slowest economic recovery since World War II. And just take a look at the Green New Deal. This is the worst idea that you could ever imagine. He's going to impose mountains of regulations and an all-out assault on the energy industry. And in some key states, that's so important, like Pennsylvania, a very important battleground state. About 600,000 jobs are tied up in the fossil fuel industry there, about 350,000 in natural gas alone. And Joe Biden, by his embracing the Green New Deal, has declared war on those industries. So you can't campaign in these states and say that you're for jobs when you're campaigning with AOC and embracing the Green New Deal. Those are all economic arguments, and they're also common sense arguments, and you better believe we're going to use those.
And you bring up the economic arguments right there, and I think that's an important point because when we're talking about the debate that we see in front of us right now, on the left, a lot of people say that to really address this issue, we need to do things such as defund the police. But the argument being made from a lot of those on the right is saying we need to improve the socioeconomic status that prevents people from having run-ins with the police, that prevents them from going to jail, whatever it may be. So if we are able to come out of this coronavirus pandemic and the economy does start coming up right now, and that does result in maybe some of these protests being quashed a little bit, is that the argument that the Republican Party and the Trump campaign in particular should be making to not only reach out to the average voter, but also black voters?
Certainly. And the president has an excellent record that he can point to when he's talking to black Americans. And look, the president expressed sorrow and horror over what happened to George Floyd and also expressed support for the peaceable demonstrations that we saw. But when those turned into riots and looting and arson and the destruction of property and people's businesses and their life's work, that's where the president draws the line. He is a law and order kind of guy, and he knows that, without peace in these cities, there can be no prosperity prosperity. That's where the president's record comes in. Prior to the pandemic, black unemployment had hit an all-time low in this country. The president has also dedicated more money to historically black colleges and universities than any other president before him. And he also enacted historic criminal justice reform, which gets people out of the cycle of crime, restores people to their communities, gives them a second chance at life. These are all very important things, and it's part of the Trump record. And that's why I think Democrats are very, very afraid of the inroads that President Trump is making with black voters, because, you know, if the president can move the needle among the black vote, it makes things very, very difficult for Joe Biden.
And you contrast that record then with Biden's record, and you can look at the 1994 crime bill. In fact, it would be very interesting to see if these protests happened a little bit earlier, if Biden would even be the nominee, acknowledging his record when it comes to these issues, because it's not a good one. I mean, we heard it in the primary. We heard it from the Charlemagne the God interview. It's something that is out there. So it's up to the American people right now to make that decision. Tim Murtaugh, I appreciate you coming on tonight. Thank you.